Nature destroys fabric constantly. Wind stresses tents under intense pressure, ice scrapes against sleeves, and jagged terrain slices into backpacks. Out here, your gear is your only shelter, and all it takes is one tiny puncture. A stray branch or a sharp rock edge catches the material. But if you look closely at modern outdoor gear, you'll notice a faint, repeating pattern. Tiny squares woven into the material, almost like graph paper, designed specifically to stop that minor damage from becoming a survival problem. To see how it works, we have to look at the geometry of traditional textiles. This diagram illustrates standard woven fabric under tension. The physical stress is distributed evenly and continuously across thousands of unbroken threads. But the moment a single thread snaps, the physics change. The tension has to go somewhere, so it concentrates entirely on the immediate surrounding threads. The extra load causes them to break, passing even more force to the next row, creating a rapid, cascading chain reaction known as tear propagation. A minor cut rapidly expands into a massive opening. In the wilderness, losing the integrity of a waterproof shell or a tent means immediate exposure to hostile weather. For most of human history, the only reliable defense against tear propagation was sheer mass. Early militaries and expedition teams used dense, heavy canvas to build their shelters and gear. This required enormous amounts of material. The sheer weight of thick cotton fibers created a severe drag on mobility, forcing soldiers and climbers to burn extra calories simply carrying their own equipment. The alternative was using thinner natural fabrics to shed weight. But in rough terrain, those lighter materials tore almost immediately upon snagging. Humans were trapped in an engineering bottleneck. They could either carry quickling loads to guarantee their shelter survived, or travel light and risk sudden gear failure. The extreme operational demands of the Second World War pushed this dilemma to its absolute limit. Armies suddenly relied on vast, airborne fabric systems. Paratroopers needed massive canopies of material weighing nearly nothing, yet capable of withstanding intense aerodynamic forces without disintegrating midair. Manufacturers turned to early synthetic fibers like nylon. Unlike natural canvas, continuous nylon threads were exceptionally light, flexible, and repelled moisture. Yet even nylon had a structural weakness. Because the threads were woven in a uniform grid, a single puncture from shrapnel or high air pressure would still trigger that same cascading tear. The military needed an architecture that could physically interrupt its-own destruction. Textile engineers devised a surprisingly elegant mechanical barrier. They wove slightly thicker, heavily reinforced threads into the standard nylon at regular intervals. This schematic shows a grid creating isolated micro-compartments, like submarine watertight bulkheads. When punctured, stress forces rush outward, but slam into thicker reinforcement threads. Instead of snapping, kinetic energy disperses, halting the tear. Unlike traditional fabric, this traps damage locally. This material, soon known as Ripstop, was integrated into military inventory. It protected field uniforms, tactical webbing, and equipment packs, constantly scraping against abrasive terrain. By localizing the damage, Ripstop bypassed the weight dilemma entirely. Gear could be made incredibly thin, while the built-in grid prevented minor cuts from destroying the entire structure. By the late 20th century, global outdoor recreation surged, but early backpackers and hikers were still dragging heavy external frames and bulky canvas blends up the trails. Outdoor companies began applying the military's Ripstop grids to civilian gear. The built-in reinforcement allowed them to drastically thin out the base synthetic layers without sacrificing structural integrity. This triggered the ultra-light revolution. Pack weights dropped significantly. Shells, tents, and sleeping bags became highly packable, while actually improving their resistance to harsh weather. Climbers and alpine teams could now push deeper into freezing, hostile environments, relying entirely on minimal, paper-thin outerwear that wouldn't shred against the rock. The fabric shifted the entire approach to wilderness travel. Humans no longer had to act as pack animals, carrying heavy loads just to survive. They could optimize their bodies for speed and distance. Eventually, the visible grid of Ripstop moved beyond the backcountry. Urban fashion and streetwear adopted the material. The distinctly textured squares became a cultural aesthetic, an instant visual signal of utility and technical performance. Yet beneath the aesthetic, the physical reality remains beautifully simple. Those tiny raised squares represent decades of material science, military testing, and wilderness innovation condensed into a single thread pattern. In dangerous environments, survival rarely demands indestructible armor. It usually requires a clever structural design.
For more content like this, like and subscribe to our channel.